is Terry Bradshaw, quarterback, Pittsburgh Steelers.
It's 7:15. There's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron.
This is baseball, Major League Baseball. And this is
ABC's Monday Night Baseball, live from Fenway Park in Boston, Massachusetts.
Looking. He's under the gun. He's flat. He throws. It is.
Hey everyone, it's time for Snap, Crackle, and Pop, the Past Our Prime podcast. And that no is not in any reference to our friend, the cereal-eating Mark Hoffman. I'm Scott Johnson. Got both Hoffy and Bill Mahoney here with me. January 12th, 1976. A tough one for me. We're getting closer to sporting events that I remember as a kid. Steelers' Franco Harris on the cover this week as Pittsburgh beats my Raiders in the AFC Championship game to advance to the Super Bowl. What's going on, guys?
Well, you know, I think you got the wrong cereal for us. We're not Rice Krispies. We're Fruit Loops.
Yeah, that works.
You're
for
a little
me.
loopy.
Are you have Fruit Loops?
Fruit Loops is the cereal of this podcast, man. Come on.
Man, what are you, 8?
We're a little loopy. We're high on sugar.
I loved sugared cereals as a kid. Oh,
So
they're
did I.
addictive.
my goodness.
Sugar Smacks, Apple Jacks.
You know, it's so funny. Like when we were kids, they were called Sugar Smacks. And
Yeah,
then like they were like, we can't put sugar in the title. So they then called them just Honey Smacks.
Is that what it is now?
I think so. And then they were sugar corn pops.
Yes.
Right, sugar
Now they're
pops.
just corn pops.
Sugar
I
Frosted
love
Flakes.
those things.
Sugar
Yeah.
Frosted Flakes. Tony the Tiger, my favorite mascot.
Yes, that's right. And tricks are for kids.
Oh,
What is it? Crunch Berries.
Oh, Captain Crunch. Yeah.
What's the other one? Lucky Charms.
I mentioned
Stop.
this before in the podcast that I knew the voice of Tony the Tiger. So
Wow.
that's great.
Now I realize, though, because my energy level is really high, to jack me up on sugar and then drop me off at school, I can see why they wanted me out of there.
Yeah, for sure.
It's party time!
Here's a tether, Bill. We're gonna have to tether you to the.
Oh my God. I just, I mean, fortunately I have a daughter that doesn't eat that stuff and is a lot more mild mannered. But man, when I think back to those cereals, I had 3 or 4 bowls of it. Let's go to school.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be able to concentrate. Sure.
Yeah, exactly. That's my teeth rotted out.
Like I said, I'm 7.5 years old at the time of this issue, and I actually do remember this game. I was living in Memphis, and it was one of the first major sports disappointments of my life, the first of many, unfortunately, which leads me to this. Is there a loss that, as a fan, stands out to you this day? Just a painful, agonizing loss for either of you? As an A's fan, I got 2 words for you. Freaking Kirk Gibson.
Oh yeah. Don't pitch to him. Go backdoor slider in that 3-2 pitch.
Don't walk Mike Davis.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a tough one. Billy, you got one?
Oh, I've mentioned it many times on the show. Dave Henderson, Doug DeCinces, Steve Crawford. Yes, all of it. All of it.
Game what?
Game 5.
1986.
Yep, I had the radio up full blast. I had the phone ready to redial to get World Series tickets. I was on my, clapping, going, "Oh my God, the Angels are going to the series!" And then a home run. Then Angels load the bases. Doug DeCinces to Steve Crawford, who's throwing them all. You can tell he was sort of rattled, throwing everything high. Doug DeCinces swings at the first one out to Dwight Evans. So. Yeah, you're not going to send, Rob Peacholo or Rupert Jones on that play. So, yeah.
Yeah, so that's people don't remember is that Henderson's home run only tied it, right?
Yeah, it did.
Right.
Yeah, it did.
And so the Angels load the bases, I think, with nobody out.
They did.
In
They
the
did.
bottom of the 9th. And
Steve Crawford was way over his head in there. Just unbelievable.
And DeCinces is hot.
He is. And he swings at the first pitch after he had just walked the guy to put him on first. And bases loaded, and he pops the ball up to Evans.
Yeah.
Anybody else, there was a shot they could get
Right.
on.
Maybe the best arm in the game back then.
Yes. and it just, you know, just
Uh,
yeah. So I
so so
just
I have
thinking about it, I can bring
Then
myself
you had to
down.
wait till 2002.
my
Yeah, I
my
did.
two words were Kirk Gibson, and yours were Donnie Moore. Poor,
Yep, yep,
rest in peace. What about
yep.
you, Mark? You got one?
I actually have two. The first one was the Cowboys losing the Super Bowl to the Baltimore Colts, Super Bowl V. Cowboys are up 13-6, like end of the third quarter, start of the fourth quarter. They have the ball at the Baltimore 1 yard line, about to score a touchdown that's going to put the game away, and Dwayne Thomas fumbles it away. And then the Colts tie the game in like with 2 minutes to go or under 2 minutes to go. Cowboys get the ball back. Craig Morton's pass goes off the hands of Dan Reeves and gets picked off. And then Jim O'Brien kicks the winning field goal. Still today, the only Super Bowl where a losing player was named MVP, Chuck Allen. It just, I couldn't sleep that night. Remember, I'm like 10 years old. I'm just so pissed. And then the other one, I guess, would be North Carolina State beating UCLA in the 74-70 finals when UCLA had a 7-point lead in the second overtime and lost the game. And the worst thing about that was not only did they lose to North Carolina State then beats Marquette, I think, in the title game, but UCLA back then had to play the third place game, like against Dayton, which just, who cares, you know?
Yeah.
Why make these teams play the third place game? Finally, they got rid of it. But if I had to pick one, probably that first Cowboy loss in the Super Bowl. That was a toughie.
Well, it's a toughie, Bill, when 55 years later he's still
Yep.
Oh,
Can remember it like he was
it's
there.
still peeling off a scab.
oh
Yep,
my God.
yep. That's for all of us.
Yeah.
When you're young, I mean, I said the Cowboys are like, what, 5-3 in Super Bowls? Why couldn't they won those 5 Super Bowls when I was a kid, when it meant the
Yeah.
world to me?
Yeah,
You could
right.
lose all of them as an adult. They lose now, okay, fine, I don't care.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That's a difference.
mean,
But as a kid, yeah, you need those wins.
If they got to one now,
And the Jerry Jones is disappointed over this season. Well, the mayor's right in front of you.
School tales, new school fire. The scorecard said we'll take it higher. Higher.
scorecard. Let's get going. UCLA with a shocker, Mark. Shocked the Cleveland Plain Dealer, that's for sure.
Yep. That Rose Bowl game into Ohio State. So there's a writer at the Cleveland Plain Dealer, which, by the way, I love the name of the paper. What other paper in the country isn't just, the Tribune or the Sun or the Times? It's the Cleveland Plain Dealer. Anyway, Dan Coughlin had such a week. So before the Rose Bowl game, he declared, if UCLA coach Dick Vermeil even hints to his players that they can win, he'll create a credibility gap as wide as the Grand Canyon. At best, he can claim amnesia or temporary insanity. When Vermeil gives his first Rose Bowl talk, the UCLA players will fall down laughing. The joke is they've already played the Rose Bowl. October 4th, Ohio State beat UCLA 41-20. Making them do it again is inhumane. It'd be like watching Muhammad Ali against Chuck Webner. I mean, you know what? He was so right, because UCLA had no chance in this Rose Bowl, right?
My goodness. So tell our listeners, Mark, our guest had something to do with about all of that.
Oh, John Sciarra was the man, especially in the second half of that Rose Bowl game, and you never want to play a team twice, especially on their home turf. So the first game was played at the Coliseum. The UCLA did not play at the Rose Bowl back then, but still, it's LA. And then to come back and have to play them again at the Rose Bowl, it's hard to beat a team twice in any sport in any year, but to have to beat them on their kind of home turf is more difficult. And John Sciarra's performance, especially in that second half, was huge to the UCLA major upset.
Billy, what do you got?
It's about basketball coaches. We all know that some of them are a little bit more animated. We'll call it frenetic during games, especially when things don't go their way. Well, in Nebraska, they're doing their best to cut down on that type of behavior. So they're cracking down on high school coaches that severely limits the occasions on which they can rise from the bench. Tom Hall, the coach of Omaha's West Side High, unfortunately, he learned the hard way. His team was leading Lincoln High 56-54 with 1 second to play when one of his players was fouled. Hall leaped up. He says, in exultation, the officials say to argue that the foul was intentional, which would give West Side 2 free throws instead of 1, and he was zapped with a technical foul for leaving the bench illegally. The West Side player was awarded 2 free throws And Hall got up again to argue that he was within his rights the first time that he stood up. Boom, another technical. The West Side player missed both of his free throw tries. The Lincoln player converted both of his technicals. The game was tied, and then Lincoln went on to win in overtime 62-59. They're telling him, sit down, Tommy. You're screwing the team up.
Oh, goodness gracious. And we were talking pre-show, but I'll bring it up again that these coaches never learn. The coach at Georgetown this past weekend got so frustrated at a missed shot that would have tied the game that he hurls his water bottle into the stands. And I mean, he throws it like Nolan Ryan drills a kid right behind the bench, and has been suspended a game. And, of course, he's since apologized. He actually knew the kid and his family. That's how they got those good seats. It was an alum, I think. But man, I mean,
dang, throwing a bottle like, wow.
I got one. The Fighting Nun. How about this? Sister Emma Ridgway, a big fan of the Cardinals, and she's trying to get one of the more intimidating players of that era. We've talked about him, the mad Hungarian Al Hraboski, to come to this dinner at her seniors night, but he already had plans. And so she's like, well, could you do that and then come to ours? And he's like, maybe. Well, he gets caught up in the night, and he's at the first engagement, and he's not going to make it to the senior party. Well, Sister Emma's having none of that. She sends a police escort to the place and has him brought to her place. And ever the showman, Hraboski shows up in handcuffs, pretending like the police had arrested him, but stayed, signed a bunch of autographs, and had a great time with Sister Emma, who was not going to let the mad Hungarian not show up to her dinner. So
he wasn't mad either.
No, apparently not. And he's had a life.
Yeah, that's really funny.
In front of the camera. He's been a TV guy for years and years, so he's obviously quite a character.
I can't think of any player. Well, maybe a guy like a Clayton Kershaw, maybe, but I can't think of people that you could do that to nowadays. Like have a police escort show up and go, okay, Troy Gloss, you're coming with me. And they just get pissed off.
They call 911 and they
Garrett Henderson.
Well, I can think of a lot of players that actually you would bring in handcuffs because they've been arrested for something.
Yes.
And then how about this one? We can all talk about this. After Drew Pearson's controversial playoff catch reignited debate, NFL figures split on whether instant replay would improve fairness or bog games down with delays and new controversies. I can say honestly that 50 years later, it's done a little bit of both. Mm-hmm. But I didn't realize that instant replay started in the NFL back in 1986. They tested it in 78. Then they removed it in 1982 before being permanently reinstated in 1999 with a new coaches challenge system became a permanent fixture in 2007. The very first regular season use was during week 1 of 1986 between the Browns and the Bears, and they used VCRs for the reviews.
Wow.
Hold on a second, the tape's stuck. Give me a minute here.
But at the time, that was great.
That was groundbreaking.
Yeah, it was.
Right? And, we all have a game. That Drew Pearson one for Viking fans. The Raiders lost the AFC Championship in 1977 to the Broncos when Rob Lidle fumbled at the 1-yard line, and they ruled that he hadn't fumbled the ball, and he clearly had, and Broncos scored on the next play. I mean, there's all these games, I'm sure, that looking back now would have changed the course of history.
Well, but even with instant replay, remember that Rams-Saints game where there was clearly like pass interference?
Yeah, that's right. The USC guy hit the guy. It was a complete personal foul. Yeah.
Right. And even after replay, they didn't change it.
No, they didn't. And that was as blatant as anything.
Right.
Mark, they said it. Jim Murray, one of the all-time greats.
Yeah, he saw for disaster because baseball was talking about having their reserve clause, getting nixed. And the reserve clause basically let a team control a player. It prevented free agency. And he said, Murray said, a society or industry built on slavery cannot survive emancipation. And he said, just ask Jefferson Davis, who, by the way, for you people that are too young to realize that or don't know history, Jefferson Davis was the president of the Confederacy. So he thought, like, you need slavery to keep the country going, which we obviously know is not true. And what Jim Murray was just pointing out is that baseball is trying to kind of enslave their players by saying, you don't have any rights, you just go where we tell you to go. And they said it's not going to end up working in the long term. Of course, it's opened up a whole new can of worms.
And Billy, you got one?
I do. Wayne Belisle. He's the president of the WHL's Minnesota Fighting Saints. He's announcing that although he could not meet his payroll, the Saints had agreed to play for nothing. A lot of fans tell me they stay away from pro sports because they are turned off by athletes making too much money. On that basis, he said they ought to have crowds of 150,000 a game now. Yeah. Yeah. Players want to play for free.
He had no idea what he was talking about.
Yes.
That gets us to our cover story. The Steelers are on the loose. Raiders and Steelers in the AFC Championship. Why does this sound like we've done this story before? And Mark, it's because we have quite a rivalry in the 70s between these two teams.
Yeah, we're going to not only did it in the past and doing it in the present, we'll be doing it in the future. 3 years in a row, the Steelers and Raiders met for the AFC Championship for a bid in the Super Bowl. In 74, the Steelers won in Oakland. This year, the Steelers win in Pittsburgh. And next year, the Raiders finally get their way winning in Oakland. But so it was a great rivalry. And, this game was like a 16-10 game. And you look at the field, the snow's on the hard field. That turf is so hard. You just feel the pain looking at these pictures from that game.
Yeah, listen to this. The heavily hyped Raiders-Steelers AFC Championship game, and it's just a sloppy, frozen mess. 9 fumbles, 5 interceptions. Billy, the Raiders had all sorts of opportunities in this game, but just kept giving the ball back.
Yeah, they just said that Oakland had moved the ball into Steelers territory 9 times through 3 quarters, 5 times inside the 30. You know how many points they had to show for it? 0.
Oh,
yeah, that's how to lose a game.
For sure. And then add into the mix of the triumphant emotional return from the main cog in that steel curtain defense.
Yeah, they had Mean Joe Green. I like how they wrote it in the article. It said Pittsburgh hit Oakland with a spiritual and emotional downer right at the start when the massive Mean Joe Green removed his black cape, flexed his muscles, slapped his helmet into place, and galloped onto the field. Mr. Green had not started any of Pittsburgh's previous 5 games after suffering a pinched nerve in his neck and a pulled groin muscle. Yeah, and John Madden said on the way to Pittsburgh, they saw the movie Jaws on their flight, and all the shark reminded them of was Mean Joe Green.
Yeah. I remember this game as I told you guys. The Raiders are down late, 16-7, under a minute to go. They kick a field goal, even though it was like, it was like second down with like 25 seconds to go or something like that. But you need 2 scores, so they get in field goal range. They kick it. They're down 16-10. They recover the onside kick. They have no timeouts. Stabler hits Branch for a gain of about 40 yards, and he's got like 1 guy to beat, but he has to get out of bounds as well. So he can either go for the end zone, and it didn't look like he was going to get there. So he tries to get out of bounds around the 15-yard line, and he doesn't. He gets tackled in bounds. Clock runs out, and they lose 16-10. Steelers advance to defend their Super Bowl title in Miami, so it would be a lot warmer in the South Beach than it was at Three Rivers Stadium that cold, brutal day. What about in the NFC? Rams hosting the Cowboys, and Mark, home field advantage did not matter much between these two teams, especially come playoff time.
Right. It's interesting that Rams and Cowboys met a lot in the playoffs in the 70s. The Cowboys did beat the Rams, I want to say it was in 73 in a game that was played in Dallas. But for the most part, it was the visitors that would come on top. So, for instance, the Rams went into Dallas and won a playoff game. It was part of the 1976 season and the 1979 season. In fact, Staubach's very last game, the Rams beat the Cowboys. And I think his last completion was to an offensive lineman. But the Cowboys, on the other hand, they went to the Coliseum and they beat the Rams in the 75 championship game, or the end of the 75 season, and in the 78 championship game, the end of the 1978 season. So, and the Cowboy wins were like 37-7 in this issue, and then 28-0 a few years later. So it was just weird how the road team would somehow find a way to win in this rivalry.
Win and in dominating fashion as well. And Billy, this one was really a head scratcher because the Rams defense had been incredibly stingy leading into this game, and the Cowboys just had a way to figure out how to put points on the board.
That's right. The Rams allowed 37 points in this game against the Cowboys. In the 5 games prior, they only had allowed 38 points. So the Cowboys sure had their number, but they had their number at the beginning of the season too. They played them early in the year, and the Cowboys actually led 18-0 in the fourth quarter of that game. So the Cowboys just, if you look back, hindsight being 2020, if you look back at that first game, you might have sort of had an idea that the Cowboys were going to win.
Certainly, they were not intimidated.
Yeah, but I got to mention, you got to talk about John Cappelletti in this game. The game that he had, it's off the charts.
The Heisman Trophy,
Heisman Trophy winner.
Yeah,
he finished with 1 attempt for 1 yard and a TD.
Wow,
You're not going to get too many stats like that.
He's batting 1,000.
He is. He just owned him.
Every time he touched the ball, he scored.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Cowboys had no answer for him.
You got to get him the ball.
They can't stop this guy.
He
scores the 1 yard touchdown, and then he does the thing where he feed me,
Yeah, exactly. That's right. He did.
Feed me the ball.
You could probably do that with AI now. Have him in the end zone and then feed me.
Yeah, that whole Ezekiel thing.
Yeah, right.
And then he does it again.
To hell with our guest last week, Preston Pearson. You only had 3 touchdowns in that game,
right.
Including an incredible diving catch. Cappelletti's the real star here.
But how would we even do an interview on that? So you get the ball one time, tell us about it.
Well,
you had a lot of fight in your team, down 37-0. You still wanted to score.
That's right.
So Preston told us that this team was what branded the Cowboys as America's team. They go to the Super Bowl to take on the Steelers. And while we talked about the Raiders and Steelers as being rivals, and they truly were, but those Cowboys and Steelers had some big games that in the biggest game, didn't usually turn out great for your guys, but those were the beginning of some really great Cowboys teams.
Well, yeah. Jackie Smith had an unfortunate drop in one of them. It's fortunate that someone paid off Neil O'Donnell in '95. And
he
kept finding Larry Brown, man.
He was open.
Again, the Cowboys win the Super Bowl. In my mid 30s. How old am I in there? And so it doesn't mean as much as when I'm a teenager and watching them lose these Super Bowls.
No, it's your whole life as a kid.
And when we get to the Super Bowl in a few weeks, I'll have a lot to say about Mitch Hoops. And people will say, who the hell is Mitch Hoops? But big factor in turning the tide of that game.
Yeah, I'm saying who's Mitch Hoops. The Cleveland Cavaliers. A Cavalier attitude is paying off. Mark, the Cavaliers, not a real huge history of success in that organization. And at this time, they had not been very good ever.
No, this is their 6th year in the NBA, and they have never made the playoffs. Their first year, they only won 15 games, and it was a slow climb. Then they won 23, then 32, then 29. And the season prior, they almost got to 500. They were 40-42. But this year's team is different. They're on a 10-1 run. They're going to finish 49-33, first winning record in franchise history, and begin to turn the tide for the Cleveland Cavaliers franchise.
Yeah, Coach Bill Fitch acquired veteran Nate Thurman, not necessarily for his stardom or his ability, but more for his character and his defense and his steady leadership. And Billy, that really helped, as well as a guy by the name of Jim Jones.
And I don't know why, as a kid, you sort of, at least I did, I glom onto a name. I just always liked the name Jim Jones. Well, Jim Jones was drafted by my team at the time, the Lakers, in the second round of the 1973 draft. That was on my 9th birthday. But then they traded him to the Cavs for a first round pick named Junior Bridgman.
Oh,
And
wow.
Jones went on to actually lead the team in scoring that year with the Cavs.
Amazing. Wow. 6
I
degrees.
always,
And then Bridgman is, a pretty key component in the deal to acquire Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
100%. It's a crazy how it all moves around, isn't it?
And then Jones came back to the Lakers, did he
He
not?
did. He did.
I think
He
he
ended up
might have
playing
won a
for him
ring
for a
with
number of
them.
years. He's
Yeah.
a good player.
And
Solid.
this team, Billy, did actually, sometimes we talk about these teams early in the season and they kind of peter out, but they actually went to the playoffs and advanced a round.
They did. They'd finished 49-33, their best record in obviously their 6 years. And they beat the Washington Bullets in the first round of the playoffs. And the Bullets were the team that Golden State beat in the finals the year before, when the Bullets had, at least everyone expected the Bullets to smoke the Warriors, and they didn't. They were swept in that. And now they're out of the playoffs for good the next year.
Ohio State folds its Oklahoma's pot. That's right. Ohio State Buckeyes, undefeated and number one in both polls, utterly dominate the first half, and yet, Mark, they're only up 3-0 at the break.
Yep. I mean, you leave points on the board, it's going to change it. And like we mentioned, you can't give, I don't want to call them an inferior opponent, but a team you beat by 21 points earlier in the season, a chance. And that third quarter, everything's changed around. The Bruins scored 16 unanswered points and really took control of the game behind quarterback John Sciarra and wide receiver Wally Henry.
Yeah, tell me about this Wally Henry.
Well, Henry, during the regular season, he caught 12 passes all year for like 174 yards, and I don't think he had a touchdown. In this game, he has 2 touchdowns. So it's like a career day for him. And I guess if you're going to have a career day, do it on, a marquee bowl game where all eyes of the country are watching, where there are 105,000 people in the stands.
And yeah, Billy, Henry goes on to play in the NFL.
He does. 4 seasons with the Eagles. In my eyes, you play in the NFL, you're an amazing athlete. You get a couple touchdowns, damn, and that's what he did. He had 2 touchdowns in his whole career, thrown from Joe Pisarcik, which incredibly enough, he might have actually been in that game. What was the one we talked to Larry Zonka about?
Yeah.
The one
Yeah,
at the end of the game.
The miracle at the Meadowlands.
That's it. That's it. He might have played in that. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I like, sometimes when I read these articles in lieu of, knowing what the team did, because people can read that, I love looking at what guys have done. That, like Mark said, Wally Henry didn't catch a lot in the year, but he gets 2 touchdowns here, and then he goes and plays in the NFL, and you think that guy's not going to do anything, but he did.
Well, I think about this all the time. These guys get recruited. They're 17, 18, 19 years old, when they first get to college. And by the time they get to the NFL, they're 22, 23. I mean, they're still developing. And not all guys develop at age 19 or 20. They wait until they're 23, 24 to start really making that leap. And maybe that's what he did. Mark, you mentioned it briefly. 105,000 people. What was the attendance for this game back when the Rose Bowl was truly the granddaddy of them all?
Right. 105,464 showed up for the game. I mean, and today they'll close sections off and stuff like that. You don't see that anymore. You see smaller stadiums, and though the really big college games like in Ann Arbor, they'll draw those 6-figure crowds.
At halftime, UCLA coach Dick Vermeil ordered quarterback John Sciarra to attack Ohio State's man-to-man coverage through the air, and the quarterback responded, going from scrambler to sniper in the second half, throwing 2 touchdown passes, repeatedly exploiting the Buckeyes' defensive overcommitments. And UCLA, truly a stunning 23-10 comeback win over the Buckeyes, ending Ohio State's national title hopes. And that helped clear the path for Oklahoma to claim the championship. But first, let's talk to that quarterback. John Sciarra joins us now on the Past Our Prime podcast. Hey, John, thanks for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be here. Appreciate the invite, Scott.
50 years ago, We were just talking about 50 years, half a century, 5 decades, however you want to look at it. You guys played Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. Now, earlier in the season, you guys played them, didn't go so well. So coming into this game, you're 15.5-point underdogs. Competitors never think they don't have a chance, but you guys had to know that you had to play extremely well just to hang with the Buckeyes, let alone beat them.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And I've heard the spread from to 15 and a half, which is actually the lowest number I've heard. I've heard all the way up to 22 points, as an underdog in that game. But whatever it was, we were certainly underdogs, and nobody really expected us to win, especially after the shellacking we took in the first game. And that was an extremely talented Ohio State team. I mean, they had, I don't know how many All-Americans on that team, and two-time Heisman Trophy winner, Archie Griffin. They were loaded. They were stacked, and they had not really had a close game all year. And they dominated. And I think that they themselves figured it was going to, this is the time for them, and that they'll win it. Not that they hadn't won a national title before, but it was something. And to this day, I've heard that Archie was just not happy about that loss, and rightfully so. I mean, that cost them the national title. And but I cannot. I mean, we had just come together as a team, and I attribute that to Coach Vermeil and his staff. But as a team, the players themselves, we were a really unique bunch of guys, and we hung with each other. And I would say in my 4 years at UCLA, the last two games, the game against USC that got us to the Rose Bowl, and the Rose Bowl game itself, our defense was spectacular. They just were, and so their effort in the Rose Bowl particularly was huge. And then of course, you have Wally and Wendell and a number of guys on the line that just did a spectacular job. So we have put it all together. I often say after that game, if you walked in our locker room, there wouldn't have been a player that would have said, "Hey, bring on any team. We have just hit our peak. We're ready to roll. We don't have any problem with anybody." We were hitting on all cylinders. And the other thing, and I think, not to keep on going on here, but there's so much about that game. The whole the prelude leading up to the game relative to practice. We talked about that a little bit, but just the excitement of the game, having not been to the Rose Bowl in 10 years, it was a big marker for us. And so in that game, the very first game that we played them that year, I think it was actually the third or fourth game of the year, and we lost 42-20. And it wasn't that we played offensively. I mean, we put up 3 touchdowns, and nobody had scored in 4 games. I think there was only 1 touchdown allowed in the games prior to ours, if that. So offensively, we did move the ball, and we did it through the option. And defensively, we struggled. I mean, look, they had 4 All-Americans in the backfield. In a huge offensive line. So they were rolling over teams. And so, and our special team, we struggled a little bit there, but they cleaned all that up. And when I say they, I mean our defense and our special teams. And of course, Ohio State was coached by Woody Hayes. And Woody was, he was a good coach. I mean, until he wasn't. And and then, they're not stupid. They said, they're going to come out running the option because they moved the ball on us, and they're going to come out doing that. So we're going to prepare for the option. And what did we do? We said, hey, we moved the ball and I'm running the option, so we're going to stay with it. So that first half, we absolutely did zero, literally. And I think the halftime score was 3-0. And they just came up. They were playing 8 in the box, and they were shutting our option game down. And to Coach Vermeil's credit, and this is what you call it. This is coaching that is not a make-believe thing. Okay, this is coaching at its all-time high. This is a guy that comes in the locker room and says, we're scrapping the game plan for now. We're coming out and we're throwing the ball. And we're going to back them off. And we're going to get them out of that 8-man front that's choking us to death. And we're going to throw the ball. We got man-up coverage, and there's no way that we cannot complete a pass. And we just came out throwing the ball. And we were moving the ball, and then we scored. Then all of a sudden, they started backing off. And that's when Wendell got off. And he was running. And so, if you could, obviously, they didn't think we had the capacity of actually, throwing the ball as successfully as we did. And I think that's something that I always feel bad about, because I wish we could have thrown the ball more. But, when you're scoring points through the option, you do what, you dance with who brung you, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And so I really give Coach Vermeil a lot of credit for, for just basically making that kind of decision. I've been in a lot of locker rooms, and I've been in a lot of games, and to see that kind of just he was so adamant about how we were going to approach that, and how he changed things. So I really give him a lot of credit at halftime to mix it up and get us back on track. And I compliment all my teammates, because it was just a spectacular game for everybody.
So how was it? You say, I know you talked about you went in the first half and nothing was going right for you. But did you guys know before Vermeil spoke, and as you're walking into the locker room, that, hey, we can beat this team no matter how stacked they were? Did you know you could beat this team, or did you feel that way?
Yeah, the story, if I've told this story once, I've probably told it a million times, but it's a true story that a lot of people kind of go, wow, you got to be kidding me. And I say, no, this has actually happened. As most people that know Coach Vermeil, and he's a mentor of mine, and I stay in close contact with him. He's just he's just a unique human being, and of course, a lot of the things that are going on, a lot of things that are not happening today that did happen back then. A lot of I, being a kind of an old school guy, I scratch my head on some of the stuff. Back then we used to hit all the time. That's today you can't do that, and I get that. Actually, it's probably one of the great changes. But when I say hit, I'm talking about during practice. On the high level of the NFL, they actually have it in the collective bargaining agreement, where the players have basically said, "Hey, we're not having contact during the week. Limited contact. It's mostly thud stuff." But when back in the day, we would rack it up pretty hard during the week. And of course, again, in the Rose Bowl, after we beat SC, everybody's thinking that, hey, we're going to the Rose Bowl. We're going to have a great time, fun, Disneyland, the Beef Bowl, the whole bit. And we go back to double days. And yeah, exactly. And that did not sit well with the players. And so we had a committee. And it was made up of myself, Randy Cross, Wally Henry was on the committee. I think Wendell was as well. We had a couple sophomores, but it was a 9-person committee. And I was kind of the spokesperson for the committee. And, hey, I was rolling any way they wanted to roll. And the players, the student athletes, were not happy about double days during Rose Bowl camp. And so we got together and we went up. And I'll tell you, every time we had approached Coach in the past, he was like, we wanted a jukebox in the locker room. We got a jukebox. We wanted a uniform change here or there. And he always accommodated us. And we got up there in his office. And first of all, we walked in. Here's the committee walking in 20 minutes before we're supposed to be on the field, and we're in street clothes. And when he saw us, he kind of went, like it was like he was totally flabbergasted. What's going on, Coach? The team wants us to have a conversation with you about practice. So what do you mean? And as soon as I started saying, okay, in my office right now. And there's a couple assistant coaches around. I say, hey, Coach, get chairs in my office. but no coach was in there except for Coach Vermeil. And we went in his office and we sat around. And he goes, "Okay, what's this all about?" And I said, "Well, Coach, we beat SC. We're going to the Rose Bowl first time in 10 years. Guys were just thinking that this was going to be a lot more fun than it is right now because we're practicing twice a day." He says, "Well, what do you think about that?" I said, "Coach, I'm good with whatever's decided. I'm delivering the message. There's guys here, they can share with that. Randy, what do you think?" "Well, Coach, working kind of hard. Maybe we need to back it off a little bit." "Wendell, what do you think?" "Well, blah, blah, blah." Wally, the whole thing, and everybody's just saying maybe we need to back it off. And he turns around. So he's behind his desk, and then he turns around with his back to us. And then he spins back around real quick and slams his hand down on the desk, and he goes, "Well, let me tell you what I think. I think you better get your asses back out of this office, onto the field, and you better be on the field in 10 minutes, or I'm going to walk up on Bruin Walk, and I'll start recruiting players that want to play and represent this institution. I'm not going on national television and getting our asses kicked in front of 70 million people. So get your asses down there right now, and you tell your teammates they better be on the field." That's how it kind of went down. I'm paraphrasing a little bit. But it was almost verbatim. And we get in the locker room, and the jukebox is going on, and everybody's partying like we're gonna get a break in practice. And we said, "Guys, get your unis on. The man's pissed." And so right after I said that, that jukebox went off, and in came the coaching staff. And it was just like, we went out there, and for the next 10 days, we practiced our butts off. And I can tell you this, if you ask person to person, player to player, if they do it all over again with the double days, they would go, absolutely. And but that's a true story. And a lot of people just are amazed by that. And I think it was that effort and that mindset that we peaked at the right time. He didn't overplay it. And I think maybe we caught Ohio State a little bit too confident. And but I will tell you this, when that game was over, if they said, "Guess what? We're playing them again next week, and we're playing back at the Horseshoe," I would have said, "Hey, bring it on. We're good. We're good to go." And I think man for man, there wouldn't have been a player in that locker room who said, "Let's do it again next week. We'll go back to Ohio State." They would have probably tried to get rough, but I'll tell you what, our defense got really good. I mean, Cliff Frazier, God rest his soul, Manu Tuiasosopo was a freshman, and he was dominating. Both those guys were dominating. And Terry Tutalo at middle linebacker. I mean, they were Del Curry. I mean, you could go on and on. Our secondary, everybody was playing lights out. So we were feeling, after we beat them, we really felt that we were right there with anybody. I think the other thing that really kind of was interesting for my personal career was that when I was a true freshman, which was the first year freshmen can play since World War II. That was 72. Was the first year that freshmen could play, and so I was our punt returner. I was the kickoff returner, and then I got in on scrap time and played a little quarterback, and played a little wide receiver. So and we opened up with the University of Nebraska at the Coliseum. And they were the #1 team in the country. Johnny Rogers, Rich Glover, that whole crew, David Hum, they were loaded. And they were the #1 team. And that was probably Mark Harmon's best performance of his career. I mean, that was his opening day. I mean, he had some great games. Mark and I are very close and remain close today, best friends. And we often talk about that game and his performance in it. And, he had a great UCLA career. I mean, he quarterbacked, we split time the second year, but we were 8-3 and 9-2 in both his years. And then we were 6-3-2 and 9-2-1. But so my very first game was against the #1 team in the country. It's not often that you even get to play in 4 years. You may never play a number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 team. Maybe you're not even going to get to play a top 10 team. But we opened up with the number one team. We won. And we ended with the number one team and we won. So I was very blessed in my career in that my very first game at UCLA was against the number one team and we won. And my last game of my career at UCLA was against the number one team and we won. So that's one of the unique things in my career that I got to experience. And I was fortunate enough to be able to have this conversation with you because like I said, there's a lot of guys that never had an opportunity to even play against the number one team, let alone a top 10 team.
Yeah, I'm going back. We're trying to remember the game. I think it was 20-17. You beat Nebraska, and I want to say it was at night. And was it Herrera that kicked the winning field goal?
Yeah, Mark, it was Herrera that kicked it. But I think it was either 17. I think it was 18-17 or you may be right. I don't know.
I know it's a long time.
That's over 50 years ago.
Yes. But I want to buttonhole the Ohio State game. So I was at the Coliseum for that first game when you lost 41-20. How much did that loss, in some sense, help you for the Rose Bowl game where you ended up beating them?
Well, I mean, you're always, where it did help is that they were the number one team and they kicked their butt. So there was no like taking them lightly. We knew what we had. So it wasn't like, oh, well, no, we knew how good they were. So we really knew that we had to play our best and at a high level. So I think the fact that they were as good as they were and the fact that they did beat us helped us a lot. It helped us stay focused. And, when Coach Vermeil, was doing the double day things, I mean, we can complain about that, but at the end of the day, we knew what his intention was. And so I actually think that in a strange sort of way, it got our minds focused to say, hey, look at guys, they beat us 42-20 the first go around. We got to keep it closer than that. We got to do better.
The one constant that I see in your career is that at UCLA, it was Dick Vermeil, and then later with the Eagles, it was Dick Vermeil. What kind of a coach was he? What kind of a mentor was he for you?
Well, it's interesting. You look at people and you see how people kind of relate to others. And, I know what his upbringing was. His dad was a tough guy. He was an auto mechanic. My dad was a truck driver. And so we grew up, just, kind of in a my dad was a no nonsense guy. And, today it probably wouldn't, but I love him to death because if it wasn't for him and my mom, I guarantee I wouldn't have had the drive that I have. And, and just the competitive nature that I have. So I love them to death, but it wasn't easy. I mean, he was very supportive. He never, and he would get on me, but if anybody else got on me, that wasn't going to be cool, So, and Dick was that way. His dad was a tough guy, so I think we connected really well when it came to working hard and how he saw things and how I kind of we just kind of hit it off. We just felt we were on the same page from the time we met. And so what happened was after UCLA, he wanted to draft me, but he couldn't because everybody knew that he wanted to draft me, and so they said, well, you could trade up, but here's what we want. Well, you're not going to trade Harold Carmichael or Bill Berge for somebody who's never played in the NFL. You're not going to do that. And so he couldn't get my rights, and the Bears ended up drafting me. I think it was their third pick. And my agent, who was Marv Demoff, always was my agent, and a great one at that. His son, actually, Kevin, is the president of the Rams. And actually, I think we used to babysit. My wife would babysit Kevin and Allison when we were in college. But so Marv, and back then, when you got drafted, it wasn't like today where there's a big production. Back then, no sales, no nothing. You had to call in, and the local sports stations during their sports segment, they would go, "Okay, let's update the draft. So and so, and they did it by radio, and that was it. And there was no cell phone, so I used to have to. I would on campus in between classes, I go over to the payphone and call Marv and say, "Hey, did I get drafted?" And he, "No, not yet. It's second round or whatever." And finally, I called him. He goes, "Yeah, you got drafted." He said, "The good news, you got drafted in the third round, or I was the first pick in the fourth round. It was their third pick, whatever it was." He said, "Here's the problem. George Halas drafted you with the Bears." And I said, "So why is that a problem?" He goes, "Because George Halas has the first dime he's ever made." And he said, he just doesn't pay players. He's just not going to pay you. So he says, "But I got good news." He says, "I got an unbelievable offer up in Canada." And they did. They gave me second round money when I went up to Canada. And I had all of it guaranteed. I had 2 years, I had a signing bonus and 2 years guaranteed. And a third year that was a big number that wasn't. And in between there, here's something that you might find interesting is how did I get to Philly? Well, this is how I got to Philly. After my second year up there, I think I was rookie of the year in 76 up there. And after my second year, I got injured and they didn't want to re-up and I didn't want to stay there. I mean, I loved Canada. It was an incredible experience on and off the field, but it isn't the NFL. Okay. It just isn't. I mean, you're talking nowhere close. Okay. And it's a different game. It's 12 players on the field, much wider field, 25-yard. I mean, it's a completely different game. I mean, conceptually, you can do some of the same stuff, but you got forward motion, no timeouts, 3 downs. I mean, it's strategically, it's a whole different game. So the way Coach Vermeil got my rights is that during that in 77, this is when Coach McKay was at Tampa Bay, and he was 0-22. I don't know if you guys remember those times, but they were horrible. Okay, that's when they asked him about what do you think about the execution of your offense. He said, "I'm all for it." That was the McKay, one of the great lines ever. I mean, I to this day, every time I hear that, I just laugh. It's so funny. But he had. So this is in 77. So I'm still up in Canada, and McKay calls up Vermeil, and they were very competitive. They were both tremendous competitors, and so when they were going against each other, they had their ears pinned back, but there was a mutual respect there. They had a mutual respect for each other. They really admired each other, but they wouldn't talk about that part. They just, but what happened is Coach McKay has no quarterback, 0. They're all hurt. And he's like 0-20, or whatever it is at the time. And he calls up Vermeil, and he knows that Coach Vermeil just got Jaworski. And Mike Barilla, I don't know if you remember that name, but Mike Barilla was a quarterback up at Stanford. So they both were familiar with him, and he was on the roster in Philadelphia. And McKay knew who he was, and so he calls up Coach Vermeil and says, "Hey, can I don't have a quarterback. And, I'm thinking that you got Barilla and you got Jaworski and you got another guy there who I think was John Walton at the time." And he goes, I got to get a quarterback. And so Coach says, "I'll tell you what, I'll send Barilla down there." And McKay says, "Well, what do you want from him?" He says, "Well, we'll figure that out later. Future considerations." So what happened was in the offseason, Tampa enters a trade with the Chicago Bears. They send a player to Chicago. Chicago sends a player to Tampa. Well, the guy that went to Tampa for Chicago couldn't pass the physical. So they had to forfeit somebody on their roster. They could protect their first 45 guys or whatever it was, and then they couldn't protect anybody else. And McKay knew that Coach Vermeil wanted me, and I was unprotected because I hadn't played there. And he pops me off and flips me over to the Eagles. And that's how they got my rights. And that was part of the future consideration deal for Mike Barilla. And that's that story. But it's so that's how I got to answer your question. That's a long answer, but that's how I got to Philadelphia.
It comes down to who you know, right, John?
Yeah, I mean, here we are, both Pac-8 at the time, Pac-8 quarterbacks, and both coaches knew who we were, and it's just funny how all that stuff just works out.
We are talking with 1976 Rose Bowl MVP John Sciarra, who guided what were they, John? 30-point underdogs? The UCLA
Well,
Bruins.
it was a big number, anywhere from 15 to 22.
Guided the Bruins to a shocking win over Woody Hayes' Ohio State Buckeyes in that famous Rose Bowl. How quickly, John, did you realize that the momentum had flipped in your guys' favor? And was there a specific throw or a specific play where you kind of looked around and went, I think we might have something here?
Yeah, the first drive that we scored, the first touchdown that Wally caught was a kind of a skinny post route. We were, I think, on the 12 or 14-yard line or whatever, and so I threw we called the play, and I think it was first down, and I overthrew it. It was I just missed him, but he was so wide open. I said to myself, how did I miss that throw? And so I think there was a run in between, and Coach Vermeil trusted me, so he let me call a lot of plays. As long as we were moving the ball, he let me go. And so he had called another play, and I think it was third down, and it was 3rd and 10. I think we were on the 4, whatever that yard line was, and I just knew we're going to run that play again. I'm running it again because I know Wally's going to be open, and it was the same defense. And that time we completed it for the touchdown. That's when we went ahead. And then, I said, okay, well, now we could play with these guys, and now we're moving the ball. But I think it was the second one when Wally broke loose, and it was a quarterback stream when you throw a 20-yard pass and he turns and runs for 43 yards. That's always a good thing. But that's when I said, you know what? I think we got these guys on the ropes, and they were really having a hard time. And our defense was, like I said, they were just playing lights out. And that offense, look, you got Cornelius Green, you got Pete Johnson, you got Archie Griffin and Brian Bashnagle. Those are your guys those are your skill position guys. Okay, all of them played in the NFL. Cornelius didn't, but here's another crazy thing. When I was up in Canada, my second year in '77. Cornelius Green was my roommate. Mm. He had gotten cut by he was playing wide receiver at Dallas. They converted him from the running like they did me. A lot of the running quarterbacks became other skill position players, and yeah, here we are, bunking together in '77 after a '76 Rose Bowl competition. But he was a great college quarterback. And like I said, then you had the other three. And then on defense, they were loaded. They had Tim Fox in the secondary, and Ray Griffin was also in the secondary. So they were just a great team. But I would say after that second touchdown, I said to myself, we got these guys. And I think everybody, after Wally ran that long run, everybody kind of said the same. We were all thinking kind of the same thing.
John, you talk about how great Ohio State was and they were loaded. But sometimes when I look, not sometimes, when I look over at your stats, you finished 7th in the Heisman voting in 1975. You were pretty doggone good yourself. Does that register with you now? And what was it like to be up for the Heisman Trophy?
Well, if you go back and read all the clippings, if somebody wanted to do that, but if you did, you would find out in the first game we played them that the two of us, it was the Heisman Trophy showdown. That if you read the LA Times, I don't know if it was Murray or whoever was writing, a lot of the papers were saying this is kind of going to be the Heisman showdown. Okay. And when we lost, I completely fell out of the running. And the reason why, and I often say this, and at 72 years old, I can say this now, but if I were to switch those two games, I'm pretty sure I would have won the Heisman Trophy. Okay. That sounds crazy, but I would never switch the Rose Bowl win for that Heisman Trophy. I just wouldn't do that. There was too many people that benefited from that win. Coaching staff, players, it was such a huge upset. Matter of fact, they said it was the second largest viewed sporting event in the history of sports. second only to the seventh game of the World Series. I think it was Boston, Cincinnati, or whatever that was. That was the only one. It was in 17 countries. It was watched by so many. Over the years, I can't tell you how many people come up to me and tell me, I won a boatload of money on that game, And so, no, I wouldn't switch that. But if you did play it out, I mean, I was the player of the game, and on every time we were on national television after that loss, I was the player of the game. So I say that only because there was no other way to go. But there's no way that I would. Of course, it's all hearsay and just my thinking. But I think it's a legitimate, I mean, you could put that together and say, yeah, that's reasonable, But to me, it's more of a joke. And that game, that Rose Bowl game, was just, to me, the highlight of my college career. And I think it was the highlight of a lot of people's college careers. And so there was, it's fun to talk about it now, 50 years later.
Scott just mentioned this to me, John, and I had forgotten about this. 105,000 people watched that Rose Bowl in the Rose Bowl. What does it feel like to play in front of that type of crowd? How electric is that?
Oh, it was crazy. That's the largest crowd I've ever played in front of. I don't even think there was that many people. I mean, obviously more people watched the Super Bowl. I played in Super Bowl 15. I'm sure more people watched that game, but I don't think the Superdome holds 105,000. And that's where we played that Super Bowl game. But no, it's incredible. I'm coming out of that locker room down the tunnel and looking up the colors. And I've said this many times in other previous interviews. The colors were spectacular. It was a beautiful day, and the red of Ohio State and the blue of UCLA was such an incredible contrast. And it was more of a color thing than actually thinking that there was an audience there. Hey, look at the stadium's blue and red, or whatever that color is that Ohio State wears. It was just an surreal, moment in, I think, a lot of people's lives.
Yeah, both teams getting to wear their home jerseys, I think, made that game really stand out. Kind of when USC and UCLA would play each other. It was fun to watch, fun to see the color and the atmosphere. But my question for you is, you're not only a great athlete, but people don't realize how smart you are. You are one sharp dude. You're an honor student. You've been very successful in your life. How is the balance between athleticism, being just a smart guy, work together and help make you such a football player that you were?
Well, it's a good question. I think a lot of it, my parents, my mom and dad, I think really were about us always being the best we can be, regardless of what we were doing. And so I think a lot of it has to do with my parents. And I had two great sisters that were very supportive too. So the family thing was one thing about just always, and I just think that I always like to compete. And so I think having a competitive nature in just about everything that you do has something to do with that. And I think the quarterback position, where you really don't, if you're going to be successful at that position, you got to be a leader. You just do. I don't know how you can win a football game if you don't have a quarterback that can lead. You've got to have a leader. And if you look, I'm not making it up. I mean, you can see, just watch the quarterbacks, especially today, how assertive they are in the huddle, what they say in interviews, how they carry themselves. So I think a lot of the quarterback position and striving for something. I always wanted to be. I knew that I wasn't going to be able to play football my entire life, and back then, the money wasn't. It wasn't like it is today. Today, if you're a great quarterback and you can stay healthy for 5 years, you can literally retire. I mean, what do they say? The top 10 quarterbacks are making over 50 million a year. I mean, that's like, you know, and granted, the money's big. And now they're even monetizing youth sports, which is crazy. I have 8 grandchildren, and 7 of them are boys. And right now, 5 of them are very active, and the other 2 are going to be active for sure. But they're all high level, select type players, and they're all competitive. And I think a lot of that has to deal with, just the support of the family and friends that really, applaud you when you do well. And it's nice to have people pat you on the back and say positive things. And I think that's one, as we evolve in humanity, as we, you like to think we just continue to evolve. And sometimes people want to make wholesale changes, and wholesale changes don't work. They just don't. And I got a whole story on that, but I'm not going to get into it. But be that as it may, evolution, natural transition. There's so many great things in sports that have evolved. Sharing a funny story, I was at an event where there was a mix of NFL players, old and young. And one of the, and I'm a big, you cannot compare eras. You go down that, road. There's just no happy ending there. There's no way to justify. There's no way to compare eras. People were the best at that time, and leave it at that. And so what happens is the younger people, athletes will say to the older athletes, and it never changes, well, I just don't think you could play today, which is, to me, when I hear stuff like that, it's just so short. It's very shallow thinking, because, Babe Ruth was the best at the time. Could he play today? Well, if he had all the stuff that you have access to, all the nutritional programs, all the training, all the different movement studies, and all the different analytics and all that stuff, okay? Yeah, he'd still be Babe Ruth, okay? But he didn't, and leave it as it is. So we're at this event, and one of these young guys says, I don't think you guys can play today. And so I started laughing. I looked at him, I said, I'll tell you right now, I'm pretty sure that you guys couldn't play when we played. And I say that because if you look at the missed tackles today, it's unbelievable. They do shoulder bumps. They don't wrap. Very few guys will wrap. Most of them do shoulder bumps, and there's a boatload, both in college and pro. A lot of missed tackles. I mean, and some of those guys I look at, and they even shy a little bit. I mean, they're not putting their nose in there. You know what I mean? And so a lot of that has to do with practice and, not getting beat up. And I get that part of it too. But it's kind of funny. I don't think you can compare eras. It's the wrong thing to do at any level, because people were the best at the time they were the best. And that's the way it is. And that's the way it's always going to be. And in 10 years from now, somebody's going to look back that's an all pro today. And somebody's going to walk up to him and say, I don't think you could play today. And it's just kind of, it's fun to talk about, to be quite frank. It's good conversation, but it's just something that is never going to find, a meaningful resolve.
Well, one thing is for certain, John, you were at your absolute best January 1st, 1976, when the Bruins beat the Buckeyes. When the clock hit 0 that day, how long did it take for the magnitude of beating Ohio State really to sink in? And what was your life like personally back on campus a couple days later?
Well, it did change things for sure, for the better. But no, it's one of those experiences that you thank God for, to be able to have that opportunity. I'm a believer, and I do think that, that we are, that as a team, and how we came together, that was just a tremendous blessing for us. And we to this day, that same group of guys, we have reunions, and we get together. We look a lot different, but we just had a reunion for the 70s 50th reunion this past year, celebrating our 50 years of and the guys all got together, and it's really cool. Frank Stevens and Raymond Bell, those two guys, and John Sullivan and myself, we've tried to create this unity and keep it together, and we've done a really good job. We had a nice turnout. A lot of guys have passed, but we had a really good turnout in that same group, and it was so fun. I'm sitting there, Wendell shows up and Wally shows up, and the three of us got together, and we don't look the same, but but just to share those kind of experiences is just a beautiful thing, and so we do get together, Coach has been at just about every reunion we've had, and we've had maybe 4, 5, 6 over the years, and this one, he wasn't able to get out, but but he sent his messages out, and he's revered by just about everybody on that team.
I got to ask you, John, I have a lot of people that are USC people in my family. Graduates love their team, and nothing makes them happier in this world than beating UCLA. Now, if they win a national title, that's one thing, but UCLA is who they want to beat. Did you feel the same way about beating USC? How important is that? I know you went to the Rose Bowl and beat Ohio State. How important is that to have that victory over USC?
Well, I mean, a lot of the SC fans will say, well, our big game is Notre Dame. And I'll tell you, that's total BS. Okay. Trust me, when you're 13 miles from campuses, in between campuses, and you're in a city like Los Angeles, and you have alumni from both that are highly successful, that, I'm just going to say, you're going to have a rival. It just is. And it's been there forever and ever. And it, to me, is one of the biggest rivals, only because of the location of the schools in the country. I mean, there's rivals all over the place, but I think both alums and students would say that it's always nice to beat that school, whether you're a Trojan or a Bruin, in any sport. I mean, I can't tell you, I look up, and if I see when the water polo teams are playing each other, the volleyball teams, or whatever it may be, you're rooting for your school. You're rooting for the Bruins, or you're rooting for the Trojans. And I think it's, some of it can get a little ugly, testy, and people that take it that serious, I think need to go to therapy. I mean, it's just, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, it's big, it's fun. You like to jab them a little here and there, whether you're a Bruin or a Trojan. It's just a great, fun thing, and make fun of it. Enjoy the moment, and, get your little digs in, but it's all in fun. And so, yeah, that right. I mean, hey, look, I my freshman year, I was returning punts and kickoffs in that. And that was arguably one of the best college football teams of all time. I mean, they didn't have a close game that year. They walked everybody. They walked right through to the national title, and we finished that year at 8-3. We went. Back then you went nowhere. There was no 6 wins, you go somewhere. You could have 9 wins and not go anywhere. I mean, you were either going to the Rose Bowl or you were. I mean, I think there was only like 10 bowl games in the entire thing back then, and you can only remember the 4 big ones, which are still the 4 big ones. And now you got 50 bowl games, and so everybody goes. No, that rival is a wonderful rival. I think it's, as long as you keep it healthy and fun, it's magnificent. It's the ones that go a little too far with it.
Fire questions fly, lightning strikes as answers try. Buzzers ring, chaos in the air. Trivia time, truth.
And I want to go back to, you talked about your friendship with Mark Harmon. And I mean, you were his understudy for 2 years, and then you took over the starting quarterback job. So there's a 1989 movie called Worth Winning, and they have you listed as a party goer in that movie. I don't think it's Mark Harmon's best movie, but the trivia question I'm going to tie into you: was Mark Harmon the first former UCLA football player to star as a lead in a movie or have the title of the movie named after his character?
Wow. Okay. So, are you talking like just
All
any
time.
student, or are you talking about?
No, he had to play UCLA football. He had to be a UCLA football player.
Okay. And you're saying, was he the very first one to star in a movie?
Right, to be the lead or have that movie named after his character. So basically his character is the lead.
Well, I mean, given that, we're in not far from Hollywood where the campus is,
Sure.
I'm thinking that, and having a wonderful theater arts department, I'm going to say no, he probably wasn't.
You are correct. And the first that I can remember that actually was a lead character was Woody Strode, who was the lead character of Sergeant Rutledge in the John Ford movie in 1960.
Wow.
So he played a cavalry officer.
I would not have been able to answer that. And I took a guess at the first question.
Yes.
John,
yes.
Nobody but Mark would be able
Mark
to
knows.
No, but see, here's the thing. Woody Strode to me he is one of the great UCLA athletes, and no one talks about him. They talk about Jackie Robinson, Rayford Johnson, Arthur Ashe. And Woody was an incredible athlete as a professional player and as a college player. And he was in a lot of films,
Right.
Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, the opening scene of Once Upon a Time in the West, where he actually shoots Charles Bronson. He was just solely, I thought, undervalued.
Well, I'm going to have to go back and check out those movies now,
Yeah.
But Mark, you got to remember, Mark Harmon was in summer school.
Yeah,
that's
true.
a great one.
But how did you get in Winning Ways? What was that about, doing a cameo?
Well, we've just have remained friends ever since college and to this day. And I'll tell you, he's an incredible human being. I mean, his accomplishments, in TV the guy's the most famous TV star in the world. Okay, for 5 or 6 years running. It was either Oprah Winfrey or Ellen DeGeneres or Mark Harmon. Those three, based on, I think it's Vanity Fair's most famous TV, personalities. And so he's enjoyed an incredible career. I just, the way I got in that is that if he thought a part that I would fit into or enjoy, that's just who he is. He's that guy. And so he figured, well, let's get this right. The movie is about him proposing to 3 different women. There's a bet, and that he has to have all 3 of them accept his proposal. Not from a morality perspective, it's probably not a great movie, but be that as it may, that one of the gals he proposes to is the receptionist for the Philadelphia Eagles. And so he figured, hey, you know what? Maybe this is good. John's playing with the Eagles right now. We'll get him in. And, and I tell you what, it was, I think I could say this now because it's been such a long time, but I got my SAG card. I had, you got to keep those cards, because, and I had one and I let it expire because I did a Era Parsesian Ford commercial when I was at UCLA, and I let it expire. And then, but I got to get a SAG card for the movie, which I did. And I didn't have any speaking, I was in, I mean, if you blink, you miss me. But if you keep your eyes open, you'll see my face in there at a party scene. And so he just figured that it's going to be a party that involves the Philadelphia Eagles. Why not have a real one, participate in the movie? And so that's how that all came about. And it was a fun couple days and very enjoyable.
John, did you have to do a lot of research into being a party goer?
No, just a lot of practice.
It seemed like a natural fit.
Right.
Doing double days again.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Hey, John, we talked to great athletes from the past, and they recollect about this game and that game and this game and that game. And I'm not saying that that isn't the case with you, but for one day, for one half, a collection of young guys came together, played the football game of their lives, and it had an impact for the rest of their lives. And we just can't thank you enough for sharing that with us and bringing us inside the huddle for that special day in your life 50 years ago, the 1976 Rose Bowl, John Sciarra, MVP. I like how that sounds.
Well, thank you, Scott and Mark and Bill. I appreciate it, and it's a pleasure to be part of your podcast here. And I wish you guys a lot of luck as you go forward.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And as we mentioned, that win by UCLA opened the door for Oklahoma to become back-to-back national champions. And Mark, they did it with defense.
They sure did. I mean, the Selman brothers, I mean, you can go on. I mean, we always like to talk about how good an offensive team is, but I mean, their defense, I mean, that year, I think they held opponents to 6 points, 10 points, 7 points, 7 points, 3 points, 10 points, 7 points. I mean, it was very hard to score. I mean, and with their offense, you needed to score, at least, 28 points, 30 points to beat that team. So their defense was elite.
A Baptist preacher with poise and flair is their quarterback, Billy, named Steve Davis, who did a lot of things well, but what he did best was win.
Yeah, it was over his whole career, at least at this point in time, 32-1-1. And if you just go in that game against Michigan, he threw 63 yards the whole game, but he did it on just 3 completions on 5 throws. So it's not that he did a lot, but he was quite the leader, and he just knew how to win.
Yeah, we had Dean Blevins on, who was a backup quarterback to Davis at Oklahoma. Davis died young in a plane crash, I want to say, in the early 2000s. But Blevins said that he was an amazing quarterback, and he ran that wishbone offense that Switzer loved to run back then, and he ran it perfectly for the Sooners. Let's move on. They're off at -56 on a brutal prairie south of Winnipeg. 376 snowmobiles sat overnight in -22 degrees temperatures, a relentless wind that made it wind chill factor of -56, and they're poised to begin a 500-mile, 3-day race that history said most machines would never finish. I'm not going to get a lot into who won or any of that stuff because none of it matters. If you're doing anything, if you're being outside for 30 seconds in -56-degree weather, that alone is noteworthy.
Did you have a friend talk to you about something about that?
I mean, I'm work last night here in Los Angeles, and guy goes out for dinner, comes back an hour later and goes, "Oh man, it's getting a little cold out there." And I looked it up. It was 56 degrees, not -56. That's 112 degrees colder. So everything's relative, right? And I keep up on the temps back home in Boston, where I spent the last few years. And, it is cold here. Your body gets acclimated to where you are, So when it gets into the 50s or the 40s here, that's quite cold. Whereas like I can remember January days in Boston, if it would get into the 40s, you're like, "Ooh, it's warming up a little bit." So it's all relative. But this snowmobile race, 50 years later, Mark, they still do it, right?
They do it, but they do it basically in Michigan. This race, this one that they're talking about in the article, was actually from Winnipeg to St. Paul, and it was 500 miles over 3 days. Now they do it it's basically all in Michigan. But to me, what's so fascinating to me is that, as you were mentioning, cold is relative. So I was recently in Europe, and it was like in the 30s, and I'm wearing a warm jacket. I got gloves on. I got stuff covering my head because that feels like -20 to me. While for someone that lives in Boston or in Prague or wherever you're at, that's probably like, oh, that's actually kind of mild right now. So we're all used to it. And I'm also convinced that 40 degrees, say, in Europe is colder than 40% here, 40 degrees here. I don't know why. Just, it's my theory.
It's Mark's theory, and he's sticking to it. 376 snowmobiles start the race, only 22 finish. And my question is, of the 354 that didn't, I mean, it's one thing if you don't finish and you're on the side of the road, but I mean, there's no
Did they die?
Where are these people?
I mean, that's the guy. I want to talk to the guy that's out in the middle of nowhere. There's no cell phones.
Right.
No nothing.
Anyone seen Jacques?
Well, I saw him go into a lake a little bit ago, but I knew I wanted to win. I mean, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, these are
Man.
life or death. It truly is. You could die doing
You
something.
could.
Like
It's 56 below.
Oh.
Wasn't it? No, I guess we mentioned Sam Kinison here, what he said. Remember what he talked about? You live in sand.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
It's 56 below. You're gonna die. Wait, couldn't Will Ferrell do that? So a guy went out in a snowmobile in 56 degrees. I'm dead.
Well, it makes it really hard for me to streak when it's that cold.
It is.
You better
It is.
keep moving. Keep moving.
Oh man, that would sound like that would hurt.
Yeah. The only person that negative 56 means nothing to that person, Lynn Cox.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
right. That's exactly right.
Oh,
she'd be
let's go.
like, this is balmy.
I'm ready to go swimming. A 30-page advertisement on the Super Bowl recapping what took place a year earlier with tons of photos of the players at Super Bowl IX. The Steelers crushed the Vikings 16-6, proving that preparation and discipline win the day. And that word kept coming back up to me, Billy. Preparation. In fact, Fran Tarkenton had a little bit to say about that.
Yeah, basically, very quickly, he said, it's the hardest game of the year to prepare for, especially when you're not preparing. Because remember, we talked to Tarkenton, and he said that. He said, we did not prepare for the game.
Yeah. He said that there were, 2 weeks off in between the championship game and the Super Bowl, and that the opponents practiced for 2 weeks. And his head coach, Bud Grant, thought that it was important for his players to kind of like rest up, heal up, get healthy. And he gave them the first week off, and then they prepped the second week. And looking back, Fran Tarkenton, and look, like we said, this is Super Bowl IX we're talking about. This is not like, the NFL championship games. They didn't have 2 weeks in between. So there was none of this how to do the 2 weeks. Bud Grant thought resting them up and getting them healthy was the way to do it. As it turns out, maybe not.
Well, no, that was what you just said. And Bud Grant said that in the article. He said, we worked out the day after the last playoff game and then took 4 days off. I went hunting. The players traveled, did what they wanted. We just relaxed. Still, we had more than enough time to prepare. Then we went to New Orleans the week before the game, and there were tremendous demands on the players for their time. Interviews and the hoopla that goes with that. So in a sense, they didn't get any practice time. They basically went from days off to all the media stuff they had to do the next week and then a game.
Yeah.
I find so fascinating about this whole thing is they're doing the history of the Super Bowl, and it's only 10 years old. What Super Bowl are we playing now? We're going to play Super Bowl 60?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could you imagine doing the history now? This would be the whole magazine. It wouldn't be a little like insert.
It'd be a Ken Burns documentary.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? Mean Joe Green saw it as an inevitable triumph. Quote, the game was won for us the minute the sun came up. So a confident Steelers team, and he was right. They won 16-6, their first Super Bowl victory, and now they're heading back to take on the Cowboys in the Super Bowl 10 coming up. All right, Gophers get out of a hole. We're talking Minnesota Gophers basketball, Mark.
Yep. They were on NCAA probation. All their best players had left, but the team would rebound. They had a bunch of players from the Bahamas, including one center by the name of Michael Thompson. And he would later become the number 1 pick in the NBA draft in 1978, played for the Blazers, the Lakers, now color analyst, works radio, covers Lakers, great personality. And one of the nicest guys. I remember covering a playoff game. I think it was Clippers and Blazers, and found him just walking around and did an interview with him. He was so super nice. But I found what really was interesting in this article, not that his future son Clay would be an NBA superstar, but that he's not referred to as Michael Thompson in this article. He's referred to as Mike Thompson, which is actually a good sign, because in college they used to refer to another player as Mike Jordan at North Carolina, and not Michael Jordan. So maybe, if your name is Michael, let them call you Mike initially, because then later on the sky's the limit.
No question. And Michael Thompson, a great player on that team, Billy, but that team had a few great players.
Yeah, coming up the next year, they had Ray Williams, who was 10th overall to the Knicks in the 77 draft, and they also had Kevin McHale, who went to number 3 to Boston in the 1980 draft. That was a pretty good team. That's 3 really, really good players.
And then throw Flip Saunders into the mix.
That's right. Flip was there. Flip Saunders was more of a role player for the Gophers. But in 1995, he was GM of the Timberwolves, working under his old buddy McHale. And then he eventually coached the T-Wolves until he was fired and replaced by Kevin McHale. So old buddies from college get to hire and fire each other.
And think of that. It's like these guys went on to have these long careers and stuff, but they were really Minnesota-centric, It all went back to Minnesota, eh?
You did.
Yeah. Hoser.
You heard it here. For the
Billy,
record.
Jack Patera.
I'm just going to do quickly Jack Patera. Jack Patera, he was the first Seahawks coach. He was once selected by the Cowboys in the expansion draft. But what I enjoyed is, because we talked about some of the guys aren't that friendly with the media, Patera actually hated the media. He did not enjoy constant questions about his coaching decisions and the dissection of his team's performance by any sports reporters. His press conference was once 7 seconds long, because after asking any questions of the reporters, he left the room when the reporters started giggling when none of them spoke up. But also about Patera, he didn't mean to do it, but in 1954, he shot and killed his former Oregon teammate when they were out on a duck hunt.
Oh my God, he did a Dick Cheney?
Yes, he did. But he was cleared of any negligence.
Wow.
My bad. Thought you were a deer.
Hey, Bob, you all right?
Well,
get up.
But he did mount him on his wall.
He is. That's what he says at the end of the article. Ken Schweitzer's head is still on my wall.
I hope he got a good taxidermist.
Oh man, that's not one you live down,
If he didn't have a taxidermist, that head would start stinking after a few days.
Exactly. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's like, there's so many great stories I'm sure Jack Patera had as a player and a coach, but that's one you can never bring up.
No. Yeah. Hey, were you the guy who... No!
Exactly. No questions. I shot him. I killed him. I thought he was a deer. Move on.
Shit happens, man.
My bad. I'm taking that one.
Now, how about this one, Mark? Resigned as head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals.
Yep, Paul Brown, 67 years old, 351 victories and 41 years of coaching, high school, college, and pro ball. The Cleveland Browns are named after him. That's how important he was. But here's the thing. So he resigns as head coach of the Bengals, but he's not leaving the Bengals, because from 68 to 91, he was the owner and president of the team.
Right.
So it's not like he's going anywhere.
No. And I thought the real story here, besides him resigning, was that they named the assistant Bill Johnson to become the next head coach, but who didn't get the job was the bigger story. And that was Bill Walsh, who was bypassed as that and went on to become the quarterbacks coach and hooked up with Don Coryell a little while later, started helped Dan Fouts become who he was. And then, of course, we all know what happened to Bill Walsh.
Before the fame, there was the flame. Faces in the crowd.
Now, Mark, you told us about this Mike Jordan guy. What about Jim Jordan?
Well, Jimmy Jordan, I think there was a quarterback at USC named Jimmy Jordan. But anyway, this quarterback is a senior at Leon High in Tallahassee. And he was pretty good. He threw for over 4,000 yards, led his team to a 12-2 record, 6 touchdown passes, 2 games in a row. So what happened to this guy? Well, he ended up playing football at Florida State and was pretty good. He was inducted into the Florida State's Hall of Fame back in '85. He tried his hand in professional football. He played for the Tampa Bay Bandits in the USFL. He was actually drafted in 1980 by the Patriots, but never played.
All right, Bill, we have saved the best for last.
Oh,
John
yes.
Stenson, senior at
John
Cal Berkeley.
Svensson.
See?
Svensson.
I got it all wrong.
I think I had to be Swedish, I guess. He's a senior at University of California. He scored the winning goal in a 9-8 defeat of UC Irvine to give the Bears their 3rd straight NCAA water polo championship. Svensson didn't stop there. He was a member of the 1980 U.S. Olympic team and earned a silver medal in the 1984 Summer Olympics. He won 3 consecutive NCAA title winning. He was part of 3 consecutive title winning water polo teams. He was also named the Collegiate Player of the Year, the Pac-10 Player of the Year, and the NCAA Tournament MVP in 1975. This guy's pretty amazing.
Absolutely, right?
Every week he's an amazing athlete, and that's the first time I've ever heard of him.
Right.
And he could be on our show any month now. You know what I mean? And then we will know John Svensson like nobody's business.
Right.
No, I'm saying, but we've never heard of Lynn Cox.
Yeah.
No.
I had.
Never heard of Jenny Chandler.
Yeah, that's true.
Mark.
So I'm saying the amazing people that do these things. Like I never heard of Bruce Furnace.
Yeah.
Well, we talked earlier about those guys wouldn't play for free. Now you're talking about the kind of people that would.
Exactly. Yep. And they gave their lives to it, so to speak. Not ward life, but I'm just saying they put everything into it.
Yep. All right, no 19th hole, so that's going to wrap it up from my Raiders' first heartbreak for me and Franco Harris on the cover to the Fighting None, the Cowboys, Steelers, snowmobiles at minus 56. This was January 1976 in all its weird, wild glory. That's what Past Our Prime is, where the past still hurts, still matters, and somehow keeps getting better, just like Bill and Mark.
Yes, that's hitting the nail on the head, right?
Weird and wild.
Exactly.
All right, guys. Good job. Until next week, we are Past Our Prime.
We are.